Welcome to the show, everyone. This is your voice of reason, back once again behind the microphone here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by producer Tom Benson as well. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight, and if you miss any of the show, make sure to check the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We have a big old smile on your face for Tom Benson. I don't know what you're thinking in there.
Well, I'm thinking we better let them know that there's no show tomorrow night, so they got to get their listening tonight.
Yes. Unfortunately, there's no show tomorrow night. I have an appointment that I have to get to that I won't be able to be here. But
what's her name?
I wish it was some hot date, but no, it's just like a doctor's appointment. Just a regular checkup. My last doctor. Just closed down to general practice. They changed to like orthopedic or something, like out of nowhere.
Bro.
And then I had to find another doctor. It was just so they're like, well, you have to make an appointment 2 weeks in advance, and this is a consultation, and yada yada. At first, I had to call like 4 different doctors to see if they were accepting new patients, and nobody cares about this, Tom Benson. Not a single person cares about what I'm saying right now. But.
Well, I'm sure you're not the only one who goes through this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you have your medical records, or did you have to start with a clean slate?
I guess I have to start with a clean slate. I don't know. They did tell me to bring my prescriptions or whatever and to tell them, what I use. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just
you'll find out tomorrow.
I guess so. Yeah. So that's why. But we are on for 2 hours tonight. And I have to cram so much in 2 hours. Cram so much because there is literally a bunch of things to talk about and a bunch of things I will not get to. I want to start, obviously, with the storm. I haven't really had a chance to talk about it too much. It happened mostly over the weekend. And you and I, Tom Benson, before we got on the air, we're talking about just the devastation and what's going to happen, the aftermath. Once the waters recede, they have a long recovery ahead of them.
There's going to be mosquitoes. There's going to be all these cars that need to be totaled. All the reconstruction that has to be done.
The roads will have to be rebuilt.
And one of the worst things about it all is every morning you wake up, it's still there. Because I've worked through 2 floods, many blizzards, and what have you. And the most impacting, what's the word I'm looking for? Pessimistic thing is to know that when you get up in the morning, the next morning it's still going to be there.
Yeah,
it takes forever. And when you hear FEMA saying we're going to be here for years,
yeah, I think they are. I mean, just looking at the video and everything. In the next hour, I'm going to get into the whole global warming aspect because they have to blame something on the right and conservatives, basically. So Trump's actually doing a pretty good job. So they have to focus their attention on other things. Mm-hmm. So this hour, I'm going to talk about how some of the focus has been against Christians, believe it or not, kind of using a storm to bash Christians, which is really amazing. Not something I really saw coming this time, but there's some examples of it that I'm going to give. In the next hour, we'll go over the global warming stuff. But I actually want to start with some good news. Because there is one good thing about a disaster like this. In that it tends to bring people together in this country. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It brings people together in this country, and it shows true resilience of a lot of people. And I think people were looking for something. It's sad. It's terrible that it took something like this to do that. But I think we have been so desperate to have something to unite us somewhat, to bring back some sanity back into our world, that this has kind of been an opportunity to do that. So that's some good news there I'll get more into. Some other good news is just seeing how individuals have responded to disaster in that area. I have actually audio here of a survivor. A great example here. This guy was just randomly being interviewed. He had just got out of a flood. He just got out of his house. He got rescued from flooding house. And I hope that if I'm ever in a situation like this, first I hope I never am. But if I am, I hope that I can react like this guy did. To have as much faith as this guy has. He's given the worst lot in life at the moment. And yet, listen to what he says when he's asked about it. Here it is.
Your day.
Man, we came home yesterday. It wasn't raining. 45 minutes later, we in the flood. And we stayed on the first floor of the apartments, and water just started coming in, so we went to the second floor.
And so how did they get you in that basket?
We climbed out the windows with the sliding doors, and they just strapped us in.
Okay, what's your name?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, how old's your son?
He's 6, Jeremiah Jr.
Yeah.
We thank God. We thank God.
And this is all you have?
Yeah, this is all we got. We lost the car, all the clothes, school clothes, everything gone. Everything gone.
Where do you go now?
We don't know. We don't know.
But you're thankful?
Yeah. We thankful. God good.
Jeremiah, thank you.
God
Jeremiah
good.
Jr., thank you.
Amazing. Truly incredible. A video kind of went viral on Twitter. And just amazing reaction. So he's given the worst lot in life. He's practically lost everything. And yet, in a way, it gave him some perspective. Because he's like, you know, all that's just stuff. It's just material stuff. It can be replaced, whatever. But I survived. My child survived. We were able to get out. We're able to move forward. And I thank God, he says. I thank God that we survived. He says, God is good. What an amazing reaction. An act of resilience. And you're seeing, that's just one example. You're seeing stories like that everywhere. And it's good. It's finally something in this country. It took the worst situation, but finally something in this country that shows the best of us. I saw a video earlier of there are people in shelters. There was a video of people kind of singing songs, bringing people's spirits up in the shelters. There was another video of a guy who dressed up in a Spider-Man outfit just to visit kids, to kind of help them and give them something to hope for. And there's story after story like this. There was a story about some teenagers in Texas. They had a small fishing boat. They said, we're going to go to a neighborhood and we're going to save people's lives. We're just some kids. Our family's going to go out and do it. They saved 50 people, something like that. There's another story out there of people holding hands. They created a human chain to save a pregnant lady who was caught in her home.
Saw several of those, yeah.
Yeah. Just amazing stories. And it kind of gives perspective to what our country really is, because the media and this year and politics and everything, we have become, the perception is that America is so divided that we're headed to civil war. The perception is that we've become such a bad country, the worst country. The perception is that everyone is full of anger and everyone is full of hatred. And yet when times are tough, when there's a huge disaster like this, all of a sudden you see people come together. And I think that's because that, at our core, that's who we are. I really believe that. I talked about a couple weeks ago when the whole Charlottesville thing happened. And you looked at Antifa and you looked at these white supremacists and you saw the horrible violence. And then that white supremacist basically had a terror attack. It was a domestic terror attack where he ran his car and killed that girl. And I just thought of it and I was like, this is awful. These radical groups out there causing violence, trying to rip us apart. But then I said this is not who we are. These radical groups are trying to make that who we are, where we're divided and head to a civil war. But the vast majority of the country is not like that. The vast majority of the country is like the people in Texas. And when you see people saving, you have whites saving blacks, blacks saving whites, women helping men, men helping women, people helping animals, which some of those videos are amazing as well, rescuing animals. Just all kinds of great situations, people lifting other people's spirits.
Did you hear they have so many animals that have been saved? They're shipping a lot of dogs to New Jersey.
Yeah.
To be taken care of for a while.
Yeah, they have to. And they actually, I read that they learned after some other situations that's what you have to do. You don't want to keep them in those areas, whatever. But there was video out there of them saving a horse that was caught in a flood. There's video of a guy, amazing video I shared on my Facebook. You can send me a friend request on Facebook of a hawk that went into a guy's truck and he could tell the storm was coming, and he was scared to death. This hawk was scared to death. And this poor guy's like, there's a hawk in my truck, and he doesn't want to go away. And he had him in his hand, and he's like, I'll just take him home, I guess. And he just helped him. And so those are amazing stories. But just the stories of people helping other people. And now you have stories of, you had the Cajun Navy from New Orleans, I believe, Louisiana, hundreds of boats, it seemed like. You watch a video and they're driving by on the highway and you see just hundreds of cars, it seems like, with boats going to help people. And we have 23 dead as of me doing this show. And if we have under 50, that would be a miracle, I think. It would just be an absolute miracle. So the good news in all of this is that this is an excuse to sort of bring us together. And there was another story here I found from Yahoo News that said the same thing. It said, divided U.S. embraces floods as a chance to pull together. And it talks about how you have Trump, who is trying to be a uniter, saying we are one family, said tragic times such as these bring out the best in American character, strength, charity, and resilience. We see neighbor helping neighbor. I couldn't agree more. You had other people, Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. Our compassion, our generosity, and our unity in the face of a national tragedy is part of our nation's best qualities. People from all sides saying stuff like this. You have many millions of people in this country donating to the Red Cross. It's just, like I said, it's terrible that it took a situation like this to do it. But it shows, I think this is what most Americans are like. When situations are just rough and bad, they will come together and help each other. That being said, there is kind of a vicious side to this as well. And I'm starting to think that social media is just the problem in this country, because a lot of the so-called controversy that's out there on a lot of this stuff is driven by social media. It's amazing how new technology can do that. There's so many stories of good stories of social media from this storm, people using social media to get help, and it's worked, and it shows one of the good sides of social media, but one of the bad sides is how it's being used to divide us. So you have some in the media out there and many on social media trying to use this storm to divide us. And one way they've done it is they've attacked Trump and Melania over stupid stuff. Another way, though, is they're attacking Christians, which is kind of amazing. And I want to give some examples of that. How all of a sudden this storm became about attacking Christians. They made me defend Joel Osteen, for crying out loud. I don't like Joel Osteen, but I'm going to defend him, and I have some audio from him. I think all of that was trying to attack Christians. I think that's what that was really about. So we'll talk about that. We have a lot more to get to. I want to get into some of the economic aspects of this. We'll get into the global warming aspect of this and much more. I also have stuff on Antifa that I'm hopefully going to get to in the second hour. And I'll end the show with things that made Yaffee laughy. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. We're also on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and send a comment there as well. So there was a cartoon put out by Politico that, it's unfortunate that this was put out. I just talked about how we were united by the storm, how people were thanking God, even in the worst of situations, that they were able to get help. There's definitely some miraculous stories out there, no doubt. And then Politico, and this is Politico. This is not some radical publication. This is a mainstream, much-read publication, Politico. They had a cartoon on there, and they also tweeted it out. They deleted the tweet, by the way. And the cartoon has this. There's a couple things they try to do in this cartoon, But it has a guy and his wife are on a roof in Texas. And the guy's wearing a Confederate T-shirt. And he's got a Don't Tread on Me flag. And it says secede on his roof or whatever. And the Coast Guard's helping him in the cartoon, lifting him up, you know, like they've been with the helicopter. And, of course, then it says this. Now, for one, it's like kind of characterizing Texans as crazy right-wingers or something, which, I mean, most of them aren't. It's just a bad characterization. But it says this, the guy who's wearing the Confederate shirt, he's being lifted up by the helicopter, and it says this, angels sent by God. And then one of the Coast Guard guys says, actually Coast Guard sent by the government. Why would you do this, Politico? Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, they're trying to bash right-wing Republicans. It's what they're trying to do. And two, they're trying to bash Christians. They think that's what we are. Oh, you know, we thank God for being helped in a bad situation. And they want to say, no, you should actually thank the government. I guess the government is their God. What a way of mischaracterizing Christians. Just because Christians are thanking God doesn't mean they also don't understand. Yes, it's the Coast Guard helping as well. Could be that God sent the Coast Guard. Whatever. This is what Christians do. We thank God because we believe God's ultimately in control and can help things in miraculous ways, help people in situations like this in miraculous ways. But Politico puts this out there, and it kind of first it mischaracterizes Texans, and then it mischaracterizes Christians. And this is not the only example this week that I've noticed where the storm is being used to attack Christians. Joel Osteen, and this blew up on social media, on my social media, everywhere. He got attacked this week because apparently his church was closed, during the flood. Okay? Now, we're finding out that's not exactly the case. They said, there was no reason for him to close. He said church was canceled because of the storm or whatever, and it wasn't a shelter. But everyone jumped on board all of a sudden on social media, especially to attack Joel Osteen. Aha! What a hypocrite. He's supposedly a Christian who wants to help people. Now, I don't like Joel Osteen. I really can't stand him, mostly. Because he preaches prosperity gospel. And, there's some great stuff that kind of by John MacArthur, which I'm going to play some audio from him later on a different subject, but he has a great video on why Joel Osteen's stuff is dangerous. The biggest reason why prosperity gospel is dangerous is in times like these, because prosperity gospel basically teaches that, if you live well and you kind of do what God wants and you're a good person, God will bestow blessings upon you and you could become rich and successful. And that sounds great until something like this happens, a flood, a natural disaster, and then all of a sudden those people are like, wait a minute, I did everything God wanted and something bad still happened to me. And then they leave the church because they figure, then that's not real. Because that's the danger of prosperity gospel. And it's not biblical. The Bible doesn't guarantee you riches because you follow Christianity.
Your riches are not here.
Exactly. It's exactly right. It actually warns you that you will face hardship and persecution and other things in this life because you're a Christian. It actually warns the opposite. One of the things I heard is his book, Joel Osteen's book, is Your Best Life Now. And a Christian should never believe their best life's now because they believe they're going to heaven. So your best life is when you're in heaven. That's the whole point. Despite my dislike of him, they made me defend him. They're making me defend him because the reaction to him not immediately open the doors to his what used to be a basketball stadium. It's huge. Could fit like 17,000 people or something. It's just, beyond reason.
He was supposed to be on ABC this morning.
He was everywhere today. But
ABC, I caught this ABC promo last night. The tone of the promo made Joel Osteen seem like a rock star.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was like.
He kind of is to a lot of people.
It was disgusting.
But, this is where I am in 2017. You're making me defend Joel Osteen. because he brings up some good points. The idea that they should have just made it an immediate shelter for 20,000 people if they didn't have supplies ready, if they didn't have security, if they didn't have staff. The under part was flooded. Roads were flooded to it. All of this stuff. The last thing you want to do is group thousands of people in a place like that when you're totally unprepared for them.
It's the same with the criticism the mayor's taking for not evacuating the city.
Exactly right.
Could you imagine 6.5 million people on the road at the same time?
Well, they tried that during Rita, and there wasn't even as many people back then, and more people died leaving. So, yeah, it creates a whole bunch of problems. So instead of being smart about this, instead of having some perspective about this, we go on bashing him. Why didn't he just... And first they acted like people were outside the building or something, begging to get in.
Trying to get in.
And he was like, no, you can't come in. No, that's not what happened. No. But he was on Fox and Friends this morning, and I wanted to play some audio because he actually gave a pretty reasonable response here. And I really think most of this is just trying to attack Christians because, even though I don't like him, I don't think he's a great pastor. The perception out there is that he's a popular Christian pastor, so those non-Christians out there still kind of use him as this, I think. But here is what he said in a response to why he did not open immediately.
The church doors have always been open. We took people in as soon as the waters receded. There's a big shelter just down the street, maybe 4 miles, where, they have thousands and thousands of people. But they've always been open. This is what Lakewood is all about. And, some of those people that, make some of those comments is they don't realize that the church was flooded. The church flooded before in 2001. And there was a point during the heavy rains where it was just 1 foot from breaching our floodgates. If we didn't have those floodgates, we wouldn't be here right now. But, it's a safety issue. But the main thing is the church is always open. We took people in, and when the George Brown, the big shelter filled up, people started coming here. So, I don't know. I think sometimes people try to make that narrative that, we're not open to people. But we've been doing this for 60 years, and we'll continue to do it.
I think he's right. I mean, could you imagine if you grouped 20,000 people there, and then it started flooding? I just give them a day. It was just a day, and there was a shelter nearby. I think a lot of this was just trying to attack him because, he's a pastor.
And the seating arrangement of that church is like a saucer.
Yeah, it's true.
Where the sides are built up and you go down into the bottom. Can you just imagine if there are people at the bottom and water started coming in from the top?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I don't know exactly the architecture, but it's not built to be. I mean, and here's the thing. There are probably hundreds of churches in that area. Were all those churches attacked for not being opened? Well, we don't know. He was attacked because it's a big target. And, I mean, I don't even like the guy. I don't even like the church. But come on, people. Get a little perspective here with this stuff. And he responded because he was asked, what do you think of all the attacks you've had? And this is what he said.
I don't pay much attention to it. You just keep moving forward. I think, life's too short to let that negative get in. But, social media is powerful these days. And I think some of it is just people that don't like people like me or people of faith. And you just got to keep moving forward and just, doing your best, not letting other people run your life. And as long as you can stand true before God and know that you're helping others. And, again, I think part of it is if you're not in this situation, it's easy to make judgments. And, there's safety issues. This is a huge storm. You don't have staff here. Just a whole lot of things going on that people don't really see. And but the main thing is, our church doors are always open.
Frankly, I think he's exactly right. And this is so true of so many situations. We like to look on the outside, and we really don't know any of the details of the situation, anything that's really going on in the ground. All we see, big building. Oh, put people there. Oh, why didn't he do that? And it's like, hello, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And, a lot of these people criticizing him, I wouldn't want to follow you in a crisis. If your first thought is just get thousands of people and grouping them in a building, that's just not prepared for something like that. And he says, I think a lot of people just, didn't know the situation, and they probably just don't like people like me, people of faith. I think he's right, unfortunately. So you have two situations where all of a sudden there was a storm used to attack Christians and Christianity. I mean, I've warned you on past shows that this is going to keep happening. And it's great examples, unfortunately. I didn't see it coming with the storm, but I think those are two different examples. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. You can comment on Facebook Live as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I got a comment on Facebook that said, note it was just Christians who attacked Joel, not atheists or anyone else. Whatever. Give me a break. Yes, there were actually some Christians who did attack Joel because they don't like the prosperity gospel. To say it was just Christians. Come on, man. Okay. So speaking of the attack on Christianity, there's something that came out today. This actually has nothing to do with the storm. There's something that came out today that said that a lot of people are not too happy about from the Christian community. It's called the Nashville Statement. And what happened is a lot of a group of more than 150 evangelical leaders from across the country released a lengthy statement Tuesday called the Nashville Statement. Guess what? And this is shocking. Absolutely shocking. Unbelievable. You know what they said? They said, we affirm that it is sinful to approve of homosexual immorality or transgenderism, and that such approval constitutes an essential departure from Christian faithfulness and witness. No. What, Christianity says homosexuality is a sin? Oh no, those haters! I mean, come on. Are we really shocked by this? There's a lot of people upset. I'm reading actually from an article where the guy's upset from the Chicago Tribune. It says anti-LGBT Nashville statement meets a more loving Chicago statement. This is his statement, of course.
That love is really working good for them on the streets of Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah, good point. Says, so this guy in the Chicago Tribune reports that, and he says this: that's a fancy way of saying that if you think lesbian, gay, and transgender people are just fine, you're a sinner.
No, I don't think that.
Not quite, but yeah. It's not that we're saying they're just fine. It's that we believe that the act of homosexuality and accepting of transgenderism, yes, is a sin.
You don't hate the sinner, you hate the sin.
Yes, it's a common thing. Does that mean we don't love them? That we don't show compassion to them? There's a difference between, okay, this is a big problem I have with the way things are. There's a difference between tolerance and validation. Nowhere do Christians say that we should, kill people who are well, there might be some radicals, but they're not saying we should go out and kill homosexuals. We're not saying we should go out and be hateful towards them. We're not saying any of that. We're just saying, and they were saying in this statement, that we are not going to accept the views that they espouse. And they have a right to do it. Just like LGBT community at large don't accept the views of Christianity, these Christian groups don't accept the views of the LGBT community. And in fact, they believe that they are being compassionate and loving towards them by saying the truth. Okay? This is the truth of the Bible says. They want to help the sinner, so they give them the truth. It's just like you would do to a family member, just like your mom would do to you growing up. She would give you harsh truths that you need to know to help you.
Sort of like an intervention.
Yeah, it's not that, we are just hateful towards them. No, stop with this nonsense. They continue, other things they said is, we deny that God has designed marriage to be homosexual, polygamous, or polyamorous relationship. Okay, yes, we know that this is not shocking. Yes, this is what evangelicals believe. We affirm that divinely ordained differences between male and female reflect God's original creation design and are meant for human good and human flourishing. Okay, fine. We deny that adopting a homosexual or transgender self-conception is consistent with God's holy purposes in creation and redemption. Okay, yes, that's what the Bible says. Yes. They also, by the way, the Bible also says that premarital sex is a sin. And all these evangelical leaders, and I know them on the list, they don't shy away from that. They say that as well, that premarital sex is also a sin. There's also a lot of other sins that this culture has accepted that these evangelical leaders have said, and they say all the time. Okay, that's kind of part of the deal. That's what being a Christian means. It means having faith in Christ and being a follower of Christ and following his example. Okay, being separate from the culture. That's just the way it is. It doesn't mean we hate everyone who's a sinner. The whole point is we're all sinners and we all need a savior. And so we're saved by faith, and then that faith changes us for the better. That's the whole point. He continues on, though. He says that some evangelical Christians and certainly some other faiths hold these views is not news. But the Nashville statement is significant because of the large number of influential evangelicals involved, and because many of those religious leaders have either worked closely with President Donald Trump or served on his evangelical advisory board. So now, somehow we've connected this to Trump.
It's Trump's fault. Let's make it political.
Somehow this became about Trump. Oh, dear Lord.
A guy who's been divorced twice, married 3 times. So,
okay,
he's not...
well, that's what they're trying. Well, and I think that's their point. Oh, well, they accept Trump.
Oh, please.
I've never heard any of these people say that Trump is perfect and all of this stuff.
No.
They've made a statement of Christian beliefs. Okay? These are the beliefs. If you don't like them, that's fine. Doesn't mean we hate everyone who doesn't espouse these beliefs. We just preach what we believe is true and try to help the sinner. That's it. But he says this in this piece here in the Chicago Tribune. He says, I'm not a theologian. I'm not even a particularly good Catholic. If we're being honest, but I do believe Jesus preached an important concept, love. He says love is something most people can get behind. I'd argue it's something that makes us human, and when embraced, makes us the best version of ourselves. Okay. This is not difficult here. We're not saying we shouldn't practice love, but love does not mean accepting sin. In fact, Christians believe love is pointing out sin to help the sinner. But they're turning this on his face. So now love is accepting everything. Okay. So what if I accept someone, what if about someone who's a thief? Okay? And we say, well, stealing is wrong. You don't love the thief? No, it's not about that. You can love the thief, but you can tell him stealing is wrong and try to point him to a better direction. It's the same thing here. It says the love of Jesus encouraged is often distorted in many ways. Yeah, and you're one of the people distorting them. In my mind, run afoul of what the man was talking about. The Nashville statement is one of those distortions, he says in this piece, a declaration that some love is acceptable and some love isn't, that some people are acceptable in the eyes of God and some aren't. Actually, the Bible does teach that. That's just the truth of it. The Bible doesn't say, oh, well, everyone should just do whatever they want and God will accept you all. Actually, the Bible teaches the opposite. The Bible teaches that everyone is a sinner. No one is accepted by God unless they have faith. So they have grace through faith. And he encourages you to follow Jesus, which is the right path. But everyone's a sinner, But he says, then Jesus comes and he says, follow me and I'll give you a better way. Follow me, follow my example, follow my word, follow me. Give up your life of sin. Give up your past. Repent, which means to literally turn around and follow me. But they want the Christianity to be all about love and acceptance without the repentance part. But the repentance part is all in the Bible. It's there. Now, you can either accept that or not accept that, but let's not try to pretend like it's not there because it's there. Okay? But this is what happened. And the reason why, people say, well, why do they focus on Christian? Why do they focus on homosexuality? Why do they focus on transgenderism? Because that's being used right now as a tool against Christians. The LGBT community is using that to show, oh, well, Christianity is bad because they don't accept us. So the Christians are defending themselves now. That's just the way it is. But none of this is really shocking. It's just basically reaffirming what's been in the faith since the beginning of it. And it doesn't mean that we hate everyone. It doesn't mean that we want to kill homosexuals or something. It means that we believe in a better path. We preach a better path, and we hope others will follow it. That's it. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on till 10 p.m. tonight. I have a call here from the one and only Bertha, who wants to respond to this. Bertha, how are you today?
I'm good, baby. How are you?
I'm okay. What's up?
You preached a good sermon tonight.
Oh, that wasn't really a sermon, but okay, thank you.
Huh?
I don't know if I'd call that a sermon.
You preached a good sermon. You see, the problem with too many Christians, they trying to tell people that one sin is worse than the other. We all are sinners. The only perfect person is God, and the church is for sinners. You can't wait till you get better to go to church. You go to church to get better. The church what happened is we supposed to preach the word and let God have his way with that sinner. You got to bring them into the church because that's what the church is for sinners. No adultery, fornication is all sin. There's no big sin and there's no little sin. We are all sinners, okay?
Right.
And then when we start accepting people for what they are and let God have his way, preach the word. That don't mean you're going to accept what they do. You tell them what they're doing is wrong and let God have his way with that person. But a lot of these churches, they're ready to throw them out as soon as they do something wrong, and yet they can go around and commit fornication and adultery, and they think it's okay.
So you're saying, I'm kind of confused in the last part. You're saying that there's some churches that are being, hypocritical?
Yeah, but you see, God is the perfect person. We're not perfect.
Right.
We're all sinners. You can't pick and choose which sin is worse than the other. Sin is sin. But we need to reach out to the sinner and preach the word. You don't just, a lot of churches will not preach the word because they're afraid that people won't come to church. No, you need to preach the word and let God have his way with that sinner. You don't spare the word, okay? But
gotcha. And they're wanting...
Say, homosexual is worse than fornication or adultery. No, it's not. It's a sin. All of it is a sin.
Well, yeah, and I don't think, there might be some out there, but I don't think that's what this statement was about, saying that one was worse than the other.
In general, what you're saying, we have to start being more tolerant of people because just your sin might be different from mine, but we're all sinners saved by grace. So when we start picking and choosing which sin is worse than the other, that's where we have a problem with religion. We got to start preaching the word to the sinner and let God work with the sinner. He said, judge that ye may not be judged. You cannot go around judging people for what they are doing. You preach the word and let God have his way.
Well, can you point out that sin to the individual sinner? Like, can you tell a homosexual that you believe homosexuality is a sin?
Yes, it's a sin, but adultery is a sin too. But the church don't throw you out because you commit adultery. You know, a lot of the people that hold in high office are going around committing adultery in the church and fornication. They don't ask you, did you commit fornication last week? No, they don't ask you that. But homosexualism, sin is sin. That's what I believe. And if we're all sinners saved by grace.
Right.
And I'm not going to look at your sin as worse than my sin. We're all sinners. God looks at all of them. He's the judge, not us. We have to preach his word and not judge. That's what I believe.
Okay, Bertha, thank you for your call. Mr. Benson, you look like you had something. You go, no, changed your mind? Mm-hmm. Okay, holding your tongue. All right. I mean, she kind of makes a point that maybe sometimes we overlook, because this is the problem. The culture sort of accepts these things, and then the church kind of just follows along. That being said, I've never heard any of these evangelical leaders accept adultery. I've never heard none church I've went to said adultery is okay, or premarital sex is okay, or cheating or stealing or lying is okay, or, stuff like that. So it's not, I think the reason why they're bringing up these two issues now is because the culture is trying to tell us that these things are okay. It's not that, this sin is worse than any other sin. It's that the culture right now is trying to get Christians to validate those things like transgenderism and homosexuality.
And if
they don't want acceptance or tolerance, or they don't want tolerance, they want validation.
Right. And if you accept us, we will see that as validation.
Yeah, exactly. And the church is basically just responding to it and saying, no, we are not going to validate it. This is not a part of our belief system. Now, the church definitely has failed in a lot of other ways. There's no doubt about it. It probably has accepted too many other things that maybe they shouldn't have accepted. That's a whole other issue. But I think this is really just a response to something specifically that's going on in our culture right now. And it's very prevalent. And it's an agenda. It's an activist agenda. And they want Christians to validate those things. And you're not going to get these evangelical leaders to do it. It's just not going to happen. It's part of the faith. So if you don't agree with the faith, then fine, don't agree with the faith, but that's just the reality of it. All right, one more hour to go. It's been a busy hour. I want to get into some of the global warming aspects of this, some of the problems with it. I'm actually seeing some scientists kind of saying, whoa, wait, we can't blame this on global warming yet. We don't really know, which is very interesting. And then we'll get into some of this Antifa stuff as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. You can call 407-916-5400, text to 23680, and we'll be right back. I couldn't sleep. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on until 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. You can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We're also on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and watch the video there as well. We've been talking about the storm, Hurricane Harvey, which is just, obviously a mess. There was some good news that we talked about in the first hour. And by the way, Tom Benson is producing as well. I don't think I ever asked you, how are you, Tom?
I am doing fine. Looking forward to the weekend. Hot dogs, hamburgers, football. Hey.
A day off?
Yeah, well, perhaps. We'll see.
We'll see.
Hey, UCF has their first game tomorrow night. It's here.
Man, I can't believe it's already football season.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, it should be. So, yeah, hopefully everyone does have a good Labor Day weekend. We were talking about in the first hour some of the good news from this storm is seeing a bunch of people rally together. Sometimes disasters like this can bring out the best in us. It can unite us. It can show the best in many people who are doing whatever they can to help other people. That's what this country does. So definitely some good news there. But of course, we need someone to blame, right? I mean, part of this is human nature, okay? You have certain people, after 9/11, after Katrina, there were certain Christian leaders, unfortunately, who tried to blame that on the sin of New Orleans. That's what caused it. Or 9/11 was the sin of New York, or Hurricane Angel was the sin of Miami. And that was God's punishment for them. So there's that aspect. But we're into the aspect on the other side, the other religion, dare I say it.
You may.
Which is climate change. And really what it's about is blaming Republicans, blaming conservatives for not blaming the U.S. government, blaming Trump, whatever it is, for not taking enough action against climate change.
Blaming deniers.
Deniers, yes.
Yeah.
If it weren't for those deniers, if the government would just do everything Al Gore wanted and Bill Nye wanted, these storms wouldn't be happening because we would be stopping the flow of man-made climate change. So you have one side that blames God and then another side that blames basically conservatives and Republicans. And, this is being floated out there. It was inevitable that this was going to happen, that we were going to blame climate change for this. And I'll get into a little bit of how that's a kind of a sketchy road in this situation. It's not at all certain you can blame climate change for this storm. The dirty little secret, the truth of the matter is, this was always a possibility in Houston. This has always been a known possibility in Houston, that you would have a devastating storm ravage that city. It's always been a possibility for that city because of its location. Just like New Orleans, it was always a possibility that was going to happen, and everyone knew it. It's just the way. Miami's the same way. Always a possibility that was going to happen. Natural disasters happen, especially when you're next to large bodies of water. Just read the history of human civilization. You have a lot of natural disasters, and a lot of them are because of the fact that human civilizations tend to congregate around large bodies of water because of shipping and a bunch of other reasons. But because of that as well, you have more chances of flooding and other natural disasters. It's just the way it is. But here's a montage here from the media trying to make this about climate change. But it's very interesting, though, when you listen to some of these clips. And the scientists they're talking to are actually kind of backing off a little bit of it. They're like, wait, we can't necessarily do that yet. Here's the montage.
Why there is so much water associated. Is there a why to this? Why there is so much water associated with this storm? One of the things we've heard from scientists over the last 10 years is that climate change does impact the intensity of many of the storms that we see.
I probably wouldn't attribute what we're looking at here. This is not an uncommon occurrence.
Could climate change... right there. The fact is that he's right. They were talking to a scientist, and they're like, is this because of climate change? He's like, I really can't do that because it's just a Category 4 hurricane. We've had those, lots of those, some of them pretty devastating, going all the way back to 1900 in Galveston. There was another one in the Keys. Obviously, Hurricane Andrew in Miami. Camille was the most powerful hurricane. That was what? When was Hurricane Camille? Like in the 70s or something? I can't remember.
70, I think it was 1970.
Yeah, so that was the most powerful. That's still, I believe, the most powerful hurricane we've ever had. So it's hard to say Category 4 hurricane is something unusual. It's unusual. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens. It's part of nature. It has been ever since we've been here. All right, it continues on here.
Be fueling the history-making nature of this storm? It's a question a lot of people are wondering.
So watch out. There could be more monster hurricanes to come.
And that's the theory that climate change is impacting all of this.
Well, we're not sure.
Okay.
The local officials in Houston didn't have any plans to study the effects of climate change in the city or think about whether the city needs to plan for more frequent and more intense rainstorms, which most scientists say are a sure thing.
We do have a changing climate. We do have warming waters. With warming waters, you get more moisture coming into the atmosphere. And what hurricanes absolutely love is moisture because that gives them rainfall. And that's what's happened in this situation with Hurricane Harvey.
Sure,
No doubt that climate change makes, particularly because of warming the ocean waters and the Gulf waters, makes storms like this more common.
2 weeks ago, President Trump signed an executive order rolling back an Obama-era regulation which required all government construction to take into account the flood risk which was being caused and the future flood risk being caused by climate change and rising...
Stop. What? They had to bring Trump into this. Well, Trump took back this regulation that said these government constructions have to take in the flood risk. I mean, there was always a flood risk for these areas. For one, these are homes. And I don't care what your construction is, unless you're making in these areas, you're building them above ground like in the Jetsons where there's on a giant pole and they're way above ground. You're not going to, what's your construction going to do? I mean, come on. They were so desperate to bring Trump into this.
I love how all the anchors and all the media people are the ones bringing up the climate change subject. They're just pushing that narrative.
I know, and it's funny to hear the scientists say, whoa, wait a minute, we're not so sure. They're trying, but all right, it goes on, by the way. There's much more. Continue on there, Tom.
Ocean temperatures and sea levels. The timing now seems almost ironic.
But bigger picture, explain why this could be more to do with climate change.
That since 1989, what they call a 100-year storm, a storm that's only supposed to happen once in 100 years. Since 1989, that's happened 6 times.
Everyone is saying
stop. So they love to put up that narrative, but they forget to tell you that after 2005, we were in the longest hurricane drought in recorded history of major hurricanes making landfall. The last such drought lasted 8 years from 1861 to 1868. But the last Category 3 storm to make landfall in the United States before last year was in 2005, and it was Hurricane Wilma. So we had a 10-year drought.
So to speak. No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. But that of these devastating hurricanes. Sure. We don't know. We can't predict this kind of stuff. It was always a possibility. It really has to do with El Nino and La Nina and all that stuff, those cycles. But it continues on here.
Storm of the century, the storm, 500-year storm. 12 years ago was Katrina. We've had now 3 storms in 12 years that were as bad as this. And a lot of Democrats will be saying, climate change is actually, this is the kind of flooding you would predict based on the climate change model. So
man-made climate change is a myth. That's the Republican Party is united on that. And I think one question we should ask, even if the Republican Party isn't asking that, is what is the role of man-made climate change in disasters like this one? It doesn't necessarily create storms like this, but does it increase the intensity of these storms? Climate change is part of this story.
Okay. Here's the facts of the matter of why this storm was so devastating. Basically, it's just dumb luck. It happened to hit at the right time in the right place. So why is the rainfall so devastating in that area? Because it stalled. Because it didn't move. It had nothing to do with the intensity. Category 4, like I said, Category 4 hurricanes have hit these areas before and didn't have those rainfall totals. But it stalled. Why did it stall? Because it happened to hit at a time when the wind currents weren't there to guide it away. Which happens. That's a part of nature. There's another reason why this happened. According to I had the story. Yeah, I got this from TheVerge.com, which was very interesting. But it talked about one of the things was it was fueled by an unlucky pit stop over a deep patch of warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. Warm water feeds hurricanes, which from when a weather disturbance like a small storm sucks up the moisture and all that. But what happened is, for one, it hit the Gulf of Mexico, which has always been known for generating these devastating hurricanes. But right before it hit Texas, it also went over what's called a warm core eddy, or an ocean eddy. What that is you have this Gulf Stream current, and sometimes this very warm current It goes down by Cuba and everything, kind of starts to move, and it breaks off, and it goes in a circular motion in certain parts of the Gulf. And it spins really warm water in that area. This storm was already in a warm Gulf, went over that warm core eddy at the exact right time before it hit land. That's why it was able to gain so much strength. And then when it hit land, it wasn't even the intensity that caused the problem in Houston. It was the rainfall. They didn't have a huge problem of wind damage or anything in Houston. It was the flooding. It happened the flooding because it didn't move. That's why. It happened to hit at the right place at the right time. And it was always a possibility. It's always been a possibility. It's kind of like the San Andreas Fault, where a lot of those city and development is in the San Andreas Fault in California. The fact is, those people know that it's always a possibility that they could have devastating earthquakes there.
You live near a volcano, you know you're going to have a problem sometime.
Exactly. And it's awful to see what happened. Now, the other reason why this is happening, you'll notice that when you can see a lot of these homes are not old. A lot of these homes that are being devastated, they're in the suburban areas. They've had major development even since Rita in these suburban areas. So if a storm hit there in the past, didn't have as much damage because people didn't live there. But you have a huge population that lives in these low-lying areas, and something like this is going to be devastating. It's awful. It's tragic, but the truth is it was always a possibility. And there's actually scientists out there. I actually read an article from Vox.com, another liberal publication, that pointed out that we can't really say this was because of global warming. The only thing they can point to is that the Gulf waters are a couple degrees above average this year.
I heard the Gulf temperature was in the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact, but from what I've read, they are a couple degrees above average this year. Now, you can say that's because of climate change. For one, is it man-made climate change? Is it natural? A lot of this stuff is debatable, as we've debated it on this show. But, I mean, these temperatures have happened before. Category 4 hurricanes have happened before. It's not that they're not even more frequent this year. We're only on, this is H, okay? That's about where we are at this time. It's not even that they're more frequent. It's that they just happen to hit the right area. It only takes the one to hit that right area at the exact time to be devastating. And that's just the truth. But they have to make this about global warming because it's a political tool. It's a political agenda. That's the always thing that made me skeptical of all of it. Because the answer to it is always more government regulation, more government involvement in the economy. No, the answer to global warming is never more free market capitalism. Never, ever. And so that's where we are. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I want to get into some of this stuff on Antifa and what's happened there. There's actually, believe it or not, a lot of leftists out there who are finally speaking out against them. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Yes, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. So one thing that it got some attention, and it's getting a little bit more attention now, but didn't get a whole lot of attention over the weekend because of the storm, was the fact that there was supposed to be sort of a free speech rally in Berkeley, in California. Now, this was not the same people that organized the Unite the Right rally. This was not all white supremacists and everything like that. They were trying to just show support free speech. Well, that actually got kind of canceled, shut down, because you had Antifa protesters, black blocking protesters, in masks and everything. They're causing violence. And it became a big problem there. And I actually was looking at a lot of the video of it before I came in today, and some of it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And I think what's happening now, which is very interesting, is you're seeing a lot of actually Democrats, people on the left who were kind of trying to ignore it before. They're having to come out against them because you can't ignore what happened over the weekend there. It was pretty bad. And then, of course, here's a little bit actually of their chant, by the way, the Antifa chant that they were chanting. It shows exactly what this group is all about. You know, people were trying to say they're like the soldiers in Normandy fighting against the Nazis. And that's what they're all about. Yeah, they're violent, but so they were punching Nazis. They're just anti-fascist. This is one of their big time chants from that over the weekend. So they're chanting no Trump, no wall, no USA at all. Yeah, I don't think this is a group you want to kind of be associated with. So believe it or not, after this, you had many people coming out against this. I was watching this exchange on the Scarborough show that I found online, where all of them, they had Democrats on there as well saying, you know, this is a bad group. They're creating violence. They're shutting down free speech. They're being just as fascist as what they say they hate by trying to shut down free speech. So that was very interesting. I actually have a statement here from Nancy Pelosi, of all people. I know I don't like to do this. This is what 2017 has made me do, Tom Benson. They're making me defend Joel Osteen.
And agreeing with Nancy.
And giving kudos to Nancy Pelosi. I don't know what to do with myself. But this is what she said in a statement. She said, our democracy has no room for inciting violence or endangering the public, no matter the ideology of those who commit such acts. The violent actions of people calling themselves Antifa in Berkeley this weekend deserve unequivocal condemnation. And the perpetrators should be arrested and prosecuted, which, by the way, I guess some of them were. I think there was like 13, 14 arrests.
Oh, you can be sure that the police authorities are going through the video that's available, trying to identify them.
I hope so, but I don't really understand what's going on with our society and not policing these things. You have these riots that went down and say, oh, well, you need to give them room to destroy. Mm-hmm. Then you have riots where they're tearing down Confederate statues and no one's arrested while this is happening. Now you have riots like this. When you watch the video, you're like, where are the police as this violence is going on? And then this week, dealing with the storm, there was an ABC reporter that came out and let police know about some looters at a store, and he got blasted on social media for pointing looters out to police.
I don't understand that at all.
Because you have to be compassionate. They're desperate.
They're looking for food.
They need to steal. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, they were just stealing exactly what they needed, Tom Benson. I mean, you have to, even in a bad situation like that, you can't let the rule of law break down, especially in bad situations like that.
I wonder if they broke into the pharmacy section.
Yeah, and they sell it to other places. But
absolutely.
But you have the situation. So in our society now, we're supposed to let people riot. We're supposed to let them tear down statues. We're supposed to let them loot, and we're supposed to let them violently shut down peaceful protests. Oh, okay. That's 2017. Yeah. Hope you're all having fun. But she actually condemned it. She said, in California, as across all of our great nation, we have deep reverence for constitutional right to peacefully dissent and free speech. Nonviolence is a fundamental right. Let us use this sad event to reaffirm that we must never fight hate with hate and to remember the values of peace, openness, and justice that represent the best of America. So you have to give her kudos. That's exactly the right response to this. The Washington Post had a couple articles out condemning it. And there's even a piece here from the San Francisco Gate, sfgate.com. And there was a reporter out there, an anchor, who said she's from KTVU out there. She said, I experienced hate firsthand at the Berkeley rally. Very interesting. This is what this reporter, Frank Somerville, said. I experienced hate firsthand today, right after the rally. It came from these people dressed in all black at a protest in Berkeley. Ironically, they were all chanting about no hate. Some had shields and gloves, some had helmets, some had gas masks. I was watching them and taking it all in. I came there on my own time because I wanted to see things firsthand. I was dressed in shorts and a tank top. At one point, I took out my phone to take a picture. And this is what, and that's when it all happened. I took 2 pictures, and afterwards they started screaming at me. I thought for sure they were going to attack. I was just waiting for it. I wasn't scared, but I stayed calm even though I thought this may not end well for me. Here's how the conversation went. Hey, no pictures, or we'll take your phone. This is how this person responded, the anchor. You're on public property. I can take a picture if I want to. Oh, you're such a big man with the camera. No, I just wanted to take a picture and talk with you. Then them rushing towards him said, we outnumber you and we will take your camera. This is an anchor. This anchor isn't there supporting Trump, isn't there with the rally, isn't with the Unite the Right or anything. And yet she goes there and he goes there and he says, I experienced hate from these people who say they're against hate. See, the left can no longer ignore this. They can no longer say, oh man, this is nothing here. They're just fighting against Nazis. No, this is a problem. Violence is a problem. This is what he said. I walked away stunned. I grew up in Berkeley and marched in anti-war protests during the 60s. It's one thing to read about hate. It's another thing to be right next to it. In my opinion, these people dressed in black are just as hateful and intolerant as the people they are protesting against. Did he have a moral equivalency there? Isn't that kind of what Trump said, that there was hate on both sides? Is he agreeing with Trump?
It was a aha moment.
Oh, no. Oh, no. It's hilarious. Afterwards, I was talking to several other protesters not dressed in black. One of them actually stood up for me as the people dressed in black were threatening me. I was touched. They were just as disappointed as I was. They said that the people dressed in black represent a small minority and they hijacked the protesters, and I agree. Most of the people out there in Berkeley were nonviolent. They were for the cause, and this is what I've been talking about before, how we're being ripped apart by radical groups. Doesn't represent the majority of the country. It says, but I do not support extremists, whether they are on the right or the left. Hate is hate, and I experienced it firsthand. It was sad to see. Very interesting how this is all coming out now. There's no way they could they could ignore this. So I have my voice of reason on the day next on this whole Charlottesville thing. I talked about him earlier in the show, Pastor John MacArthur, who one of my favorite evangelical pastors out there. He was asked about this in a Q&A session, and he gave a very interesting answer that I'm going to play the whole thing for you. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight. If you missed any of the show so far, make sure to catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We're on Facebook Live as well. Just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, and you can see the video there. So I haven't got to my voice of reason of the day, but I will here. It's on the Charlottesville thing. We've been talking a lot about it, and we've been talking about the Antifa group and what they've been doing in Berkeley, but a lot of the controversy started with Charlottesville and the violence that happened there on both sides. Dare I say it? But Pastor John MacArthur, who preaches at Grace to You Church, best-selling Christian author out there. I've read like all his books. Great. He was asked about this. He does like Q&A sessions sometimes with people of his church, a lot of times young people. And he was asked about his response to what happened in Charlottesville. And it's obviously a very Christian response, so I know some of my listeners won't like it. Some of the anti-Christian people that listen won't like it, but I think he gave a very reasonable response here, a very good response here on what's really going on with the hate in this country. And so we're going to play the whole thing there. It's kind of long, so sit down, relax, and listen. You don't need to always hear me. I mean, I know you want to, but let's go ahead and listen to them ask a question to Pastor John MacArthur.
Hi, Pastor John. My name is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
I was back and forth with this question, but I received some slight peer pressure through text message, so...
So you succumbed to the pressure.
Yes, I did. Okay. So with that being said, what is a biblical and Christ-proclaiming view of Charlottesville, Virginia, and all that's happened recently?
Sure. I'll give you a biblical view of it. The human heart is desperately wicked. And the human heart is hostile toward God and self-centered and proud and selfish and angry. What Charlottesville simply demonstrates is that fallen humanity is corrupt. All I see in that is the justification of anger. Look, that's not about slavery. That's not about something that happened 200 years ago. That's an opportunity for angry, hostile, self-willed, selfish people to explode and feel good about it. Because they can get away with it when there's enough of them, too many of them to stop. No one tolerates white supremacists. When I was down in Mississippi years ago, I was arrested by those kinds of people for preaching the gospel in black high schools, and I was put in jail, and they took all my money away. I know that. I was with the black leaders in Jackson, Mississippi, when Charles Evers, Medgar Evers' brother, Charles was the first black mayor in the South. His brother Medgar was the first martyr of the civil rights movement. He was killed. I was in the room when Martin Luther King was assassinated with those black leaders. And we went to Memphis, and I stood on the blood spots on that motel with those men. And I stood in the little bathroom on top of the toilet where James Earl Ray shot him out the window. Those men were my friends. That was my community. I couldn't buy groceries in that town when I got back. In Mendenhall, Mississippi, I couldn't eat in a restaurant. I've seen all that. That's not what's going on there in Charlottesville or any of these other demonstrations. This is the wretched, fallen human heart feeling like it can rise to any level that is not completely controlled. And let me tell you what gets you there. Number one, the human heart is evil. War is in the heart. Men will kill. That's how they function. But God has built 3 restraints into society. Restraint number 1 is in the individual, and it's the conscience. But the conscience reacts to a moral law. So if you have a whole generation of young people that have been taught a twisted, perverted, inverted, upside down, and backwards moral law, then their conscience can't function. The conscience is simply a recognition mechanism that says that's wrong, that's right, that excuses and accuses. But it only can function where there's a sound moral law written in the heart. So you have a whole generation of these people, this generation, who have had a totally perverted sense of what morality is. And the dominant part of this new morality is, I'm the most important person in the world. It's all about me. It's the selfie culture. So conscience is now crippled. Secondly, God put fathers and mothers in a family to bring a rod to discipline people in order to subdue their evil. If the family is destroyed and the family breaks down, then you have no control over those people. So conscience can't function because the moral law has been literally destroyed. Families don't function, so there's no discipline learned. There's no sense of what is right, what is acceptable behavior. And the only institution left that God ordained was the police. And the police were given a sword to subdue those who do evil. When you assault the police long enough that you diminish their authority and the sense of fear and the sense of reverence that a society has to have for those who police them, then all hell will break loose. Conscience isn't functioning, family's not functioning, and the police have been stripped of their powers in the social consciousness. You literally have unleashed the human heart at its worst level. This is not about race, and this is not about what happened in America in the past. No one can tolerate white supremacists. No one can tolerate the Ku Klux Klan. One of my dear friends, John Perkins, his brother was killed in front of him by the Ku Klux Klan in the street. No one can tolerate that. That is just one manifestation of the evil of the human heart. And we have only begun to see it once it's unleashed, and it's going to start coming in all kinds of forms because of the breakdown of moral law, the breakdown of the conscience, the breakdown of the family, and because of the incessant assaults on governing authorities. So get ready. I don't think it's going to go away. Okay?
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So that was my voice of reason of the day. I know it was long, but everything he said, I thought was frankly right on the money. I thought it was good. That's why I read a lot of his stuff, and I just like a lot of his stuff. So it's good stuff. He talks about how, 1, the breakdown of the family is a problem. 2, the hateful human heart, which can be a problem. 3, the bashing of police. That's kind of the last stop in all of this. That can be a problem. And he breaks it down. And just in an honest, very truthful way, coming from a Christian perspective, of course. So we will end the show with things that made Yaffee laughy. A little bit of a lighter note. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
So, Tom Benson, you know, I had that person comment on Facebook Live when I was talking about the Joel Osteen thing, saying it was Christians.
Yes, I recall.
Who were attacking Joel Osteen. And I don't deny that that happened, but I can't find any evidence that says it was Christians that started this. In fact, there was a story on MarketWatch.com, and it says one of the people who started it, his name is, he's a publicist, entertainment publicist named Danny Duraney, not a Christian. There was also another person tweeting about it, Washington, D.C. based writer Charles Clymer, not a Christian. I went to Joel Osteen's Twitter page and was looking at all the original reactions to his tweets about donating for hurricane relief update. They were practically all not Christians, attacking him because saying we don't need religion to help us and all that stuff. So I'm just not, I think my original statement that a lot of this is because people wanted to use this as an excuse to attack Christianity, I think that statement still stands. I think I was right.
And they can't hammer on the president, so they're going to hammer on somebody else.
Well, yeah, and you were brought that up in the break that you think a lot of this is, well, we can't make Trump the villain here, but we have to make someone a villain. So we're going to make either Christians a villain or Joel Osteen. But I mean, honestly, and I don't like the guy, but honestly, he responded probably in the best way you could. He was very positive, very nice, opened the church. I mean, what do you want the guy to do? Maybe they wanted him to part the seas. All right. It is that time of the show. Once again, we're going to end the show with things that made Yaffee laughy. Yes, things that made Yaffee laughy. By the way, just so you all know, there was a ton of stuff I didn't get to in the show today. A ton of stuff that I did not get to in the show today.
Well, there's always tomorrow. Oh, no. There isn't.
You're just going to make me feel guilty for that. I have to miss one day, and yeah, it's okay. But no, I wanted to get to there's a debate. Every time a storm comes up, there's a debate on price gouging, on whether that should be allowed.
Heck no.
See, you don't think so.
No.
But there's actually some pretty good arguments that it should.
Supply and demand, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a piece. I know this isn't my Yaffee thing. I'll get to that in a sec. But there was a piece in from John Stossel, of course, big libertarian. He had a great piece that talked about what happens a lot of times when in these big disasters is if you don't raise the prices because of supply and demand, like we do in every other situation. That's why gas prices are going up, because the supply is going to go down. That everyone goes and rushes to the store. The first people there buy way more than they need, and then people later come and they can't get any supplies. So their argument is, one, it sends out the best information on what supplies are still needed, but two, it's a better way to allocate resources. So when you actually allow them to raise prices gradually during these disasters for these essential needs, you're going to allocate resources in a better way because that way people, when they first get there, won't just buy it all up and then people later don't have any.
But a case of water for $42?
So you're talking about that story in Best Buy. They found a Best Buy in Texas where the case of water was $42. Now, he says they figure out the water. I guess he put it in a computer and they figure out how the supply or something. I don't know. And that was the price that came up, and he didn't realize it was price gouging. It was obviously price gouging. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, no matter what the economic, John Stossel makes a lot of sense when he talks about that. It could be the better way to allocate resources. But socially, we're not going to change the laws. Because he's kind of going after Texas for going after price gougers. He's saying they're punishing people for practicing capitalism, is what he's saying. But he's saying they shouldn't do that. It's not going to change. Well, there's no way you're going to get politicians to change the laws against price gouging.
There's one thing to further capitalism. It's another thing to take advantage of people who can't afford certain prices.
Well, that's the other argument. The other thing is, it would depend if they can't raise it too much, because then they wouldn't. That would be the argument. You can't raise it too much because then people wouldn't buy it. So I don't know. That's a whole other debate. But the fact is, if people walked into a store and they saw water for $50, there would be like riots in the store. We can't allow this to happen. Mm-hmm. That's why you're never going to get rid of the price gouging laws, because socially as a society, even though his economic points kind of make sense, socially as a society, the people are not going to accept it. They're just not. So if you start having the price gouging in stores like that during a time like that, you're going to have like riots. And that's just, it creates more problems. So.
Or when the crisis is over, your store will be boycotted.
Yeah, that's true too. But then they would say that's just part of capitalism. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Well, a very interesting subject we could have gone much more into, but I want to get into the thing that made me laughy. A guy's Twitter account was blocked after a death threat. A Japanese man recently found his Twitter account permanently frozen after tweeting a violent message alongside a picture of a corpse. Bastard, where do you get off biting me all over while I'm trying to relax and watch TV? Die. Yes, it was a picture of a mosquito. So this guy, he tweets out a picture of the dead mosquito that he kills that was biting him during when he was watching TV. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Twitter blocked him.
Because of violence?
Well, actually, it turns out that Twitter apparently did not realize he was talking about a mosquito. I guess they have an algorithm that goes out. So they put on this algorithm, and just because he said something like...
They were going on the text versus the... without the context of the picture.
Yeah, so there you go on that. I just thought that was kind of funny that he tweeted out and it seemed like so bad, and then apparently it was just it's just a picture of a mosquito. I think that they reinstated his Twitter account. I'm surprised though. I mean, PETA was probably pretty upset.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he killed a mosquito and bragged about it. PETA was out there. You remember when PETA got really upset at Obama? Do you remember that he swatted at a fly or something when he was on some show, late night show, and he like swatted at a fly or something that was in him, and PETA got so upset because it was against an animal.
I worked with a guy who was doing a talk show years ago, had a member of PETA on the show, and he was talking about, he asked him, what would you do if you found a tick on your dog? Would you kill the tick? And the guy said, no, I'd take the tick out and I'd take it to the woods.
Really?
Yeah. Can you imagine that?
So what? Okay, well, you should have asked him this then. What if it was a black widow? A black widow spider is on your dog or something. Do you kill the black widow spider to save the dog or save yourself?
You save the dog.
Well, I mean, I would think so, but do you think the PETA guy, or would the PETA say this is just, would the PETA guy just say this is nature running its course?
I don't know.
The dog died as a part of nature.
I'd hate to think that, but it's a possibility, I suppose.
Of course, what's really interesting about PETA is dogs usually eat meat. But I think they have to actually find vegetarian dog food to feed the dog or something. But then some PETA people, I think, are against even having pets.
Oh, really?
Because you're
you can find them?
You're enslaving them, Tom Benson. Yeah. You don't think that's coming? That's coming. There's gonna be a whole campaign against having pets within my lifetime. I guarantee that. All right, I thank you all for listening today. A lot we talked about. If you missed any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We're on Facebook Live as well. You can catch the video of the whole show on Facebook, just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. And, well, I'll catch you guys next time.
Couldn't sleep, I had to listen to a conscience knowing so well that nothing comes from